So a user recently submitted this portfolio in my Discord server, and notice 14 years old, which is quite impressive given the fact that we could see this 14-year-old is dabbling in TypeScript, GraphQL, microservices, React, TypeScript, Rust. Now, while I was certainly starting web design when I was 14, I am 39 now, I wasn't getting into stuff that was quite in-depth like that. So I thought it'd be cool to do a refactor of this design here. I like that he's showcasing the portfolio projects in the hero section, but I think we can improve several areas, so let's get started. So here I have a screenshot of the layout, and the very first thing I'm going to do is take the background and make it darker. Now this isn't black. Black here would be this. This instead is up right around here roughly. So I typically like to avoid going completely 100% white for most cases, or completely 100% black. Now, right here, the next thing we're going to focus on is going to be the navigation. Now, there's a problem right here with this navigation. If we get our ruler and I place it right here, we can see there's a clearly defined column that goes all the way to the left. However, we can see right here, based on the navigation, there's a column that essentially ends right here in the, it's not even the middle, it's offset. Typically, you would want to have something over here in the navigation that follows and basically essentially establishes a guideline or a column right here at the very end, which we do not have. So if you look down here, we do have social media icons, and it would make most sense, in my opinion, to put those right here so we can keep a centered navigation, but put the navigation icons, or the social icons rather, over here. And I think that would make a lot more sense. So I'm going to be using a different font as well, and it's a font that I like to use sometimes. It's kind of trendy, and it's a condensed type of font called BBoss. So to show you what that looks like, I'm going to paste in just a simple wordmark based logo, midka.dev, Midka, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. We're going to keep the centered navigation as well. Put that right around here. And it looks nice and solid. Make sure that is centered up in the actual design. And then finally, those social media icons, which I have off screen as well. So go ahead and paste this roughly right around here. And that's pretty solid. Of course, we want to use a grid to make sure there's equal white space on the left and right. But this is just a quick demo. All right, so now notice how it fills out the design much more. So if I get the rulers here, you can see we have a nice even point on which we can establish a layout, kind of like a guide going down as compared to this. All right, so the next section is going to be in the hero section, and we have two columns, and we're going to keep that two-column approach. And for that, we have a Who Am I section where it just kind of lists some details. 14 years old. I use ARC, by the way. I like math figures. Okay, so all this stuff I would not put if the purpose of the portfolio is to get a client. I would not mention at 14. I wouldn't mention that you play games. You wouldn't be taken as serious. Again, if your intention is to get hired, as like a freelancer at 14 years old, I did. So I don't see, why anybody else wouldn't want to do that either. Okay, so we're going to refactor that copy and the design as well, because we need to feature this. We need more visual hierarchy. Even though the Who Am I is pretty big, we're going to make this a lot larger to fill out all the space that we have available here. All right, so we could take this type right here, and I usually advise doing so. Just keep this the same font for the most part, just to keep things consistent. We could do Who is Mika instead of Who am I. We can refer to yourself in third person just to make it look like you're actually, that important. So we could go up to 80. We can go up to 100. We could keep this. We can go like that. And upon doing that, I kind of stumbled into something interesting, sort of like a graphic design effect. We could take the I in is and kind of create an arrow that points down to Mika. I think that would be an interesting play. It makes it unique. You could even, if it were an SVG, which would have to be if we start modifying things, create some type of SVG-based animation when the page loads. So let me show you what I came up with that I thought would look pretty cool for the headline. All right, look at that. Now notice how much larger it is and how much I guess you could say screen real estate it consumes in relation to the rest of the UI. This is typographic visual hierarchy. This is the most important element, so we're going to make it the largest. Notice how it's kind of like lost right here. Showcase is the same exact size for the font, so one doesn't really stick out over the other, but one is more important than the other. So we're going to emphasize this one right here, which is the headline. Typically, that's going to be the largest element when a page loads for a hero section of a portfolio, a website, or whatever. Okay, so next up after that, we have to worry about the secondary information down here, which is usually referred to as a subheadline. So I thought to myself, maybe we'll put this into 2 columns, and we'll just talk about programming, which this person is obviously aspiring, or at least, who knows, perhaps a competent programmer. And then we'll put a second feature as well. So for that, I have this. All right, so we have a kind of like a title with some text underneath it that will kind of elaborate a little bit further on programming itself. Notice we're not putting the age because that's going to be a buzzkill. We're not putting the fact that you like gaming. That'll be a buzzkill. Again, this is all assuming this isn't just for fun. You may actually be trying to get some lunch money essentially. So we need to maximize your chances of getting clients. Here's the second column. I didn't really know what to put. Excellence in business, life, and passion. I can solve your problems, whatever. You can probably work on that. However, we're not putting the fact that you like games and that you're 14 years old, okay? Even though it's impressive, people won't hire you specifically for that purpose. All right, so this is going to be almost the finish of the left column. I am going to put, however, a call to action, which is lacking right here. I wouldn't consider these being primary call to actions down here. These are kind of afterthoughts of a way to contact you. But we have all this empty space. Definitely need to have a call to action, maybe to see more projects or to contact you or hire you. So for that, I'm going to put this simple call to action. Notice I'm using color for the first time. We want it to stick out or stand out quite well. So I'm going to put that right here. Now, one thing that I also like to do to make layouts a little bit more interesting is integrate what I like to call texture. So texture is just kind of breaking up the monotony of the background. You don't necessarily have to do this. It's not an objective thing that you have to do every time, but it's something that I do like to do in different scenarios. So I'm going to copy and paste a few different things here. As we can see, if we look at this layout, we have a couple different columns. We have a column here and a column established here. So we can play off that with grid lines. And what I mean by that is if I paste in a couple elements here, so these are low contrast grid lines essentially. If I kind of zoom up, you'll see what I mean. All right. And because they're low contrast, we can put them real close to the text. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy this and kind of continue it all the way down. Maybe right here. We'll take this one, duplicate it, put it right there. And then we'll also duplicate this one and just drag it up here. So we're going to have 2 grid lines that kind of just accentuate those columns. Now it kind of just looks a little bit more interesting. Again, this would be kind of like a graphic design asset accent rather, that we can apply to the design to make it look a little bit more interesting. So notice how much filled out this column is as compared to this column over here. Okay, so finally, the next thing we need to worry about is this area over here, and we could definitely improve it. And one of the big things that affects developer portfolios are the thumbnails. These thumbnails, in my opinion, aren't ideal. We can definitely make them better. So what we're going to do is, because I don't have access to whatever these projects are, I just went to Dribbble and I screen grabbed a couple really good sort of UIs that we could put into our own thumbnails So let's go ahead and do that. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to put 4 of these because we don't have the space, but we could certainly put 3 with one of them cut off, perhaps with a sort of, I guess you could say, a circle-based navigation, so that a user could go and see what is off screen. All right, so for the first one, and because I want to integrate more color, let me go ahead and paste in this right here. Now, I'm also going to paste in 2 more. And notice how they have a lot of color. So I'm going to put this right around here. We want to make sure we have equal white space between them. Okay, now for the actual thumbnails, I thought of something cool. For the first one, we're going to offset it. And again, this is all achievable with CSS, so I'm not doing anything that's too crazy here. But notice how it's not, typically you might just put this into a square with rounded corners, but I decided to double click into this and move these anchor points around so that the bottom right portion is just stylistically, makes it look a little bit more interesting. I do also have a drop shadow here, which affects the other cards, and it just gives it depth as well. Next up, we just have some type to worry about. So I'm going to put this right here approximately. And then we have just some type that would go underneath it, perhaps in the sense of a simple description. All right, so that's the first card. Very simple. I'm going to go ahead and take the next 2 cards and just kind of paste them into place. Right there. Very nice. And then I will do the same with the remaining type for the cards. I'm going to put those into place. Roughly right down here. Okay, now notice the background images of each of these cards kind of relate to the color scheme that's found in the thumbnails themselves. So that's another kind of subtle little aspect that I worked in here just to make the design a little bit more consistent. And finally, going back to this idea of texture, we could add a watermark, a typographic based watermark in the background. So I'm going to paste this in, Mika, just the name of the person, maybe down here. And it's so low contrast compared to the background that you can put it right behind this type. This type still has a lot of contrast available to it. Finally, we can come down here and notice right here, we want to make sure that we're adhering not just to our column-based alignment that we have over here and also over here with the navigation, but also row-based alignment as well. So what I mean by that is if we get out our rulers, I pull this down, the bottom of this card establishes a row, as well as this one as well. So we could take this and just push this right up against that. And then we could also, assuming because this person had 4 of those, so there could be one off to the side, we could use some type of interesting interaction, maybe like a mouse movement where these things kind of like reveal the other ones off to the right. We can have a little navigation down here as well. So for that, we could just take this element. There we go. And we could also have maybe an arrow-based navigation as well, where a person could click this. So now, one thing that's very important, you'll want to make sure that elements like this, like icons or type or whatever, adheres to your rulers that are set up here. So we're going to move this right here. Now it's a little bit too close to this element. So I'm just going to take all this stuff and just move it over. That way we give ourselves a little bit more space around this icon. And then finally we'll fix this up by pushing it over here. And Shift R to get rid of those. And there we go. That is the design. So here is theirs. And here is mine. All right, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed that. You learned how to design Refactor just a bit. As always, make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.